Hey, I'm Whitney Brock, and welcome back to my studio. This is the last part 4 of the Red Apple project. Phew! We're just going to be painting the apple in this part, and we're also going to be titling. You didn't think I was going to leave it at the red apple, did you? Pff, boring. No, titling is important, and it can be frustrating and a lot of fun to think of just really a very easy, maybe a 1 word or 2 words that you want to use to tell a big story. So let's get started, and we'll conclude with the title that I came up with. From the blocking in stage, the red apple took me about an hour to paint. So I condensed it the best I could to 20 minutes without speeding it up so fast that you couldn't really see what I was doing. So I'm getting my highlights in first, just using pretty much straight titanium white. Any light pops or bright reflective areas I get in first, and I really just want to keep the integrity of the really white areas so that I don't lose them. It's amazing how dull your painting can be if you don't take care of these areas and keep them pure. Then I'm just laying in with my dagger brush the red that I really want the main color of the apple to be, which is cad red with a little bit of quinacridone magenta. I wanted it to be really red. And then the yellow parts are the cad yellows or yellow. And you can see I'm pretty much laying in a lot of color where it belongs and avoiding some serious detail so far. The apple shape, this is a really great example to show you the serious part of the painting process because it's a simple shape. Now you can see, because I had to paint into the apple during the fabric painting, I couldn't really worry about that at that point. So now I've got to clean it all up, but I also do not want this apple to look like it's stuck on. So I have to take a lot of care when I'm going right up to that edge. I need to soften it. And of course now that looks like crazy old outline, so that's not going to be able to stay that way. But I had to take a minute to restructure and get the shape of the apple back to where it was before I attacked it with my fabric painting. And right there you see that's just a turpentine brush. It's no pigment, and I'm softening. It's a hard angle for me to paint at without knocking my head into the camera, but I'm softening that edge, and it's kind of like half on and half off, so I'm halfway into wet paint. The other half of my brush, which is a flat red sable brush, is in the dry fabric area. It just knocks the harshness off that fresh paint that I just put in on the very, very edge. Now in the reference, there is a lot of little characteristics about this apple that I want to depict, give it its little personality that it was born with. And those little marks and the things that make an apple unique or anything in nature to make it look natural are these subtle shifts and differences in the coloration. So from red to yellow and so forth. These shadows are from the fabric at the very bottom. Now this is what is going to give it that magical depth, that thing that places it where it is and convinces you that is where it's supposed to be. I'm trying to get the form on the right side of the apple now, the same way I did on the left. And this is the light side of our form, but I'm going in pretty dark right here just to establish that edge and crisp it up. So while I've got that color on my brush, I'm going to go ahead, like I did in the fabric area, go ahead and check out where else I need that same color or value. So the form shadow is on the left side of the apple, and that is the shadow from itself. I'm going to be talking about the reflective shadows in a minute. So I had to, see, I kind of messed up the fabric there. I had to restructure that little bit of fabric at the bottom. It's amazing how many little marks. See, well, I've got the dark on there. There's a dark band there between my highlights, and that has to be a lot of care taken to keep that nice and soft. So right now I'm just using my flat red sable. It's a number 6. Actually, I think it's a number 4. I'm restructuring again. It's not what it actually needed to be, a little bit larger, I felt. A little more bulbous on that side. Just made that word up. And okay, now I've switched to my dagger brush. And I said before in the last video that the dagger brush is just amazing. You can make all of these neat little tiny marks, and you can make a broad brush stroke as well. But I did do a little cleanup right there with my flat. So I'm trying to make that outline area not so outliney. And that light area on the far left, that is a reflective shadow. All shadows have the color that is in the environment. So the environment is the white sheet. So I really wanted to make a cool reflective shadow on that side. So you probably wouldn't have even noticed that or known to even pay any attention to it. It's just a way to nestle an object into its position with some sort of convincing quality. So I'm starting to get a little bit tinier with my brush strokes, and I'm going in the direction in which these little character markings are on the apple. I'm painting in that same direction, which is downward. And if you really, really look at an apple before you eat it, it's just amazing what's in there, what's in the skin. And so I'm also not only making the marks, I'm trying to get the colors that I want. See, I'm still kind of keeping it broad. I still need to have the form be convincing as far as value. So you go from light on the right side to a darker value on the left side. While I had it on my brush, and I'm going to just make some markings up at the top there. And that's why I bounce around so much, is while it's on my brush, I just make sure that I go around the areas and use what's on my brush. Now you saw that feathering. This is one of those really tedious, awkward parts about painting the red apple, is right there. That light has to really sink down into the contour of the apple itself. So if I don't make those little marks that I'm making right now and pull that down very, very subtly, it will read as too harsh, too shocking, and it'll just sit up there on its own and not become part of the contour of the apple. And I think it was about this time that I realized I needed to deepen some of that value on that side, on the left side. And there, I did a little cleanup. See, that's a half on, half off. What you saw just right there is my favorite way, my most successful way of softening harsh edges that is wet going into dry. I'm getting into some detail here that was from the reference material. I'm not following it just dead on. I'm getting the idea, I'm inspired by it, but I'm not necessarily, copying every little tiny thing. It's really a guide, and if you don't follow it at all, you are running the risk of not having a convincing, successful painting of an object. It can just, it's hard to beat nature. And interpreting it is always fun, but you want to make sure that you are still an artist at the same time. Now, the cad yellow streaks in there, I'm trying to really just form them and get them where I want. And then it's going to take a lot of little tiny marks, which you'll see in a mere moment. A lot of tiny marks. There's almost like just little spots, little tiny dots that start getting into the minutia of the skin of the apple. So I'm using the pointed side of the dagger, the detail side that I love, love, love so much. So again, I'm hopping around and I'm trying to smooth out some of these transitions from yellow to red. And I'm still going in the downward motion, the streaky downward motion. So it's really hard to ignore the fact that it's really streaky at this time. So I change my direction in a moment. See, I'm just almost laying in. If you lay in that dagger brush at the angle, it makes just really beautiful, natural apple streaks. See, while I have it on my brush, I'm putting a little bit of cad yellow. Once I get into the cad red with it, it makes a whole new color. So I sort of distribute that just to naturalize other areas. This is when I realized I need to make that darker. It'll just give that apple a more dramatic form if it's shadowed more on the left side. Sinking it way down. I'm going to do a whole video, I think, on value. I think that is totally underestimated as far as the impact it could have when you're really paying attention to that value, how it just makes objects become more three-dimensional. And that's the whole goal, is you just want to reach in and grab that apple and take a bite. I think I pretty much have all the colors where I want them, and I'm just reconfirming that shadow in a real dark value, softening it in because you just don't want it to be so harsh, but it's going to be harshest right where it's up next to the object in which is creating the shadow. So here I think I start going, I'm just softening that, going in the opposite direction. Here I go. I am now changing my direction with the broad side of my dagger brush, and I'm just knocking those downward streaks off just slightly. It's a very light hand, and that soft dagger brush is just doing the trick. So I go really all over, and it looks like, you might be destroying your hard work, but you're not. You are making it soft. You are making it more natural. It's almost like a wood grain at that point. And when you really look at wood grain, you see these huge grains going with the grain of the wood, but you also see these beautiful, beautiful lines that just go in the opposite direction across those grains, and it just makes it rich. So I do realize that when I'm doing this, I am kind of destroying a little bit of my work, but I'm going to go back in and layer some back in, and that is the key to a convincing painting of any object, I think, is to, get it going, break it down, get it going again, break it down again. I know it sounds tedious, but it's worth the work. Now I'm going back in with some of my red that I made from my CAD red and my quinacridone magenta. So I'm just basically going back in. You see, if over top of what I sort of destroyed, I'm getting even a more beautiful depth to the skin of this apple. It's really coming together. So like I said, the whole thing took me an hour. I wouldn't recommend doing this in 2 sittings because you really need to have it wet on wet in order to get this to sink into the depth of the markings of the skin. You don't want anything to look stuck on. So when those little marks I'm just doing now are just those little spots. This is where it does kind of get tedious, but I love this part. I love it, I love it, I love it. These little marks, as I'm laying them in, I have to ignore the fact that they really look very harsh. They look stuck on, like I said, and you don't want to keep them that way. But while they're on the brush, and since I'm going into some wet paint, it's really difficult to keep the CAD yellow, bright CAD yellow. I've edited out all the parts of this that I'm actually reloading my brush, because that would have been you just looking at the apple and nothing going on. But this took a lot of reloading, just so you know, of CAD yellow to keep it good and pure. I add a little titanium white to it to give a little bit more variation. I felt like it was sort of dying with just the CAD. I needed to change up. And I haven't softened any of that yet, just kind of sticking it on there. So I just know that I want to kind of finish this little dotting of the CAD before I start softening, because I'm just in a zone right now. I'm in a zone. I want to stay in my zone and stay focused, and then I get into just a little bit of softening, and I get in that zone for a while. It keeps the process going smoothly and keeps harmony going throughout the object. Do not underestimate the little details and how important that they are to up the quality of your painting. And this could hold true to any part or anything that you are painting. We get back to some real time here, fast time I should say. These are all just the final little markings. And you notice I haven't done the stem at the top, and that will be the very last thing. But we've come a long way in a short amount of time. I've got just cad red on there. My white pop is nice and bright like it should be. I'm double checking all my transitions of values and color and hues. I don't want anything to stand out. You know, you just want it to all become one thing. If something's standing out, you need to address it. So the last thing we're going to do is the stem. And then we'll be done. And then we get to title this baby. I'm so excited. Thank you for following along on this little bit of the journey. And I hope that you got something out of this way that I have filmed it and commentaried. And there we go. Wow. The 4-part red apple project has come to an end. Whew. It was quite the journey. I loved every minute of it. And the last thing we're going to do is reveal the title. Now, I've been thinking about this the whole time I've been painting. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. Here we go. The title is Forbidden. Okay, I know, read into it what you will, but I love the one-word titles that suggest a whole lot of things or tells a bigger story or just sort of lets your imagination go where it will. So there you have it. This has been a great journey, and thank you for coming along with me. And if you enjoyed it, you got something out of it, even a little chuckle or an eye roll, please hit like. And I would love for you to hit subscribe so that you can come along on the next journey with me. So until then, keep learning, keep painting, and just enjoying your own journey. Thank you so much.